Hey everyone, in today's video, we're going to be going around the gym to try every V7 that we lay our eyes on. We'll analyze important techniques that we run into and break them down into actionable advice that will help you climb V7 and progress through the grade. Okay, this first boulder we're looking at is this purple one. Now let's have a general look at it. There's something that's very striking right off the bat, and that is a lack of footholds. Maybe with a lower grade boulder, V6 or V5, we'd have some foot chips in this area, but we don't because this is a V7. So what this means is it's going to be extra important that we make a good use of the footholds that we do have, which are actually the handholds as well on this boulder. So it looks like we're going to have to be stepping where our hands were earlier. And the other tricky thing about this boulder is that the holds are quite large. So how do we know actually where to put our feet? Well, I did a little root read of this boulder before we started looking at it, and I can already tell with these side pull sequences at the end, these sideways pinches, it's going to be actually very important where we put our feet in order to get the most purchase out of these holds. And it's because we can't simply pull down on them. So I'll show you what I mean. I'm going to climb up here. So if I were to just take my foot, put it right in the middle of this hold, it's going to be very difficult for me to pull down on this side pull because it is sideways. We're going to want to lay back on it, right? So I'm going to need to think a little bit more critically about where I'm putting my foot on this large surface. And if I move it a little bit to the left, it's putting my foot to the left. What this does is it allows me to lay back much better on this hold. Whereas if my foot is more to the right, I can't do this as well. Same thing on this right hand pinch. If I were to stand right in the middle of the hold, my leg is actually going to push me this way. But what I can think about is moving my left foot to the right of this hold, thus actually being able to push downwards right and move my body to the left so that I can get some more purchase off of this sideways pinch and create a better layback. So let's show what that looks like. So foot to the left, so I can lay back on this pinch, and then foot all the way to the right so that I can get as much of a layback as possible. So I think the extra footwork involved in the sequence really speaks to the complexity of V7, as well as the less of a need for lots of footholds, because having to maneuver little nuances and where to put a foot on a big surface, especially having it just be a handhold, is like more in the V7 grade. Whereas the V6, you need extra push feet, not only to give like visual cues to the climbers of what to do, but also like it's just harder to put my foot on the side of this to like ride over to this move. Whereas if I have a foot here, that's just in a better position, it makes the move V6. And actually there's one more thing I want to talk about with this boulder, and that is another element that I was focusing on for these vertical pinches. Because like I was saying earlier, it's really hard to pull straight down on these pinches, right? Because they're sideways, we want to be creating laybacks. Now, you'll notice especially with the move up around the corner, I couldn't quite do it super slowly. And that's because, well, actually this foot is kind of not even just underneath me, but it's actually to the left, where I want a foot kind of on the right so that I can lay back the hold. So what we do is we're kind of only getting like a micro layback. We get a layback for a second, but then we just have to go because we're gonna fall if we just try to hold this position. So oftentimes when we're moving between these side pulls, we wanna focus on a two-step move, a two-step process for this kind of move. And it's sort of like, I like to think about it as kind of a roundabout move. So the first step, we want to have the side pull, and we want to shift our body. So we're going to look at my right hand, for example. So I want to I want to shift myself down into the left so that I'm on the other side of the side pull and I can actually lay back on it. So that's the first step of the roundabout move. And then now the last step is to counterbalance with our foot, kind of flag off the wall and pull up into the next move. So I'll just demonstrate that again. So step one, down and left, and then step two is go. And I really want to flag hard with this foot. And that's because the hold is too bad and facing the wrong direction for me to just simply pull straight and diagonally to the next hold. So it's important that I do this roundabout and really flag hard with the right foot. Okay, so this next one we're gonna be looking at has a very obvious and prominent theme, which is smearing. So we don't have any footholds at the beginning here. We're just smearing our way up until we're up on the underclings, and then we can step on some feet. And another obvious theme is actually the intensity of this undercling sequence. So not only are we smearing, but the underclings are like, I mean, they're pretty positive, but there's a lot of force that we have to put through on our arms and our legs because there's no footholds to kind of take the weight off. So first, let's talk about the smearing, because that's the most glaring technique at the start we want to focus on. So pretty simple with smearing. The idea is to do it effectively. We don't want to have our feet low, because if our feet are low, you see how I can't actually get all of the surface area of my rubber on the wall because my calves aren't that flexible. So if I was to try and walk my way up with my feet low and I'm just having the tips of my toes, you see how they're slipping? So that's not what we want to be doing when we're working through a smearing sequence. What we want to do is make sure our feet are nice and high, because that way there's less mobility required to get like more surface area with our rubber. And the more surface area we have with our rubber, our feet aren't going to slip, right? And the wall actually feels like, I can really feel the stick, and it almost feels like a jug. So with smearing sequences, feet high, lots of contact area with the rubber, creating more friction so we don't slip. And then the second part I want to talk about the sequence is the intensity of the undercling sequence. So yeah, of course we see underclings in V6, but I think V7, just the general undercling power is taken up to the next notch. The idea is actually to treat these moves using a similar muscle pattern that is required for deadlift. And so the second part of this idea is I actually recommend, if you like to work out off the wall for climbing, to incorporate deadlift into your workout routine. And I'll go give a little demonstration on how to deadlift in a second. So the very brief explanation before we go deadlift is, one, we actually don't want to be bending our arms too much and like really in this like small box, because this is putting a lot of strain like everywhere. I can feel my hamstrings, my biceps, everything is just really engaging. And it's also where we can tweak our back. If we're like really pulling in with our arms and crunching our back, like we all know, if we're lifting a heavy object, we don't want to be having our back arched, because that's how we hurt ourselves. And we want to sort of, have a neutral spine, really lift from the legs and having our lower back engaged. And it's the same idea with underclings. So I'm going to be feeling a lot more power if I really, you see how my lower back is straightened, and I can feel the muscle groups involved in the deadlift while I'm doing this. And this idea can be used when we have no feet and we're just smearing, or when we do have feet. But the idea is with the underclings, treat it as though it's a deadlift or you're lifting a heavy object and lock out that lower back. You'll feel more power and you won't hurt yourself. All right, so now that we have a good idea of how to approach the beginning, let's do the whole boulder. It looks really fun, this one actually. So first step, gonna put our smears nice and high. Once we get into this undercling, I'm gonna make sure that I'm locking out my lower back, finding a stable position. And then I can actually get some purchase on the footholds. And now we have a foothold here, but it kind of feels a little bit too high for me. I don't want to use it. That was a really fun move. Same thing with these smears, put them nice and high, lock out that lower back, and we're chilling. Okay, deadlift. So let's do a quick breakdown how to deadlift. You have your feet about shoulder width apart, but the most important part and what is going to pertain to climbing the most is your back and how we're like actually executing the lift. So we want our arms like nice and straight, similar to what we were talking about on the wall. We don't want to really be bending our arms. We want to make sure our back is neutral, like we have a neutral flat back. Because like I was saying, if we're hunched and we try to lift this heavy object, we're going to tweak our back. Same thing on the wall. If we're hunched, we try to do a heavy lift, we're going to hurt ourselves. So we're going to have a neutral back. We're going to really focus on sitting back into the deadlift and really pushing down heavy through our legs and engaging our lower back and flexing our core. This is how we execute a deadlift properly, and that's how we execute a really intense undercling move properly as well. So if we train the coordination and the muscle patterns and the strength, during our workouts, while we're doing deadlift, we're gonna be able to do it on the wall a lot better. So I definitely recommend deadlift to incorporate into your workout routines. Okay, so the next one we're looking at, red crimps. And another obvious element to this boulder is that all of these, well, almost all of these edges and crimps are capped. So this is something setters love to do in all the gyms. You can even see some of these holds are capped by other holds, like this one. And I think this is definitely intentional. And also this red crimp up there is capped by the black. So what this does is it's an easy way for the setters to increase the amount of difficulty. One, making you must be more precise when you're moving to the edges. And what this means is you are inherently required to have like either more coordination or more strength. If you have more strength, you can just lock off slower and have more time to reach the crimp. But if you don't have the strength and you're trying to compensate with the coordination to just, okay, I can't pull slowly, I'm gonna pull fast, but I have the coordination to catch the hold in time. You kind of have two lanes to try and navigate through blocked holds such as these. So let's approach this one from the more technical aspect first. Let's say we're not strong enough to just like lock off every move and make sure we don't miss it, and we have to kind of pull a bit fast. Very, very important thing to focus on. It sounds a bit simple and silly, but you got to look at the hold you're going to. Now, it sounds silly because we think, oh, of course I'm looking where I'm going. But actually, what we do a lot when we're climbing is we kind of dip into using our peripheral vision, and we're just kind of like, we can kind of see where we're going. But with the blocked holds, it's actually very important that you stare precisely at where your hand is going to go. And this is going to help your brain and your coordination track your hand to hit your target. So let's climb this boulder. I'm staring exactly where my hand is going to go. And I'm even going to do a jump move to this and really take it up a notch. I'm going to stare at the hold. You can see I didn't even hit it perfectly, but definitely helped. Okay, we have a pretty tricky cross move. I got to be precise. Stare at the hold. Yeah. So, like I said, I was trying to climb dynamically through these crimps to really show the coordination aspect involved in this. And if I was to just kind of not really pay attention and try and jump between these holds, there's a much higher chance that I wouldn't have hit every single one and I would have fumbled it and fell. So yeah, stare at the holds. Sounds simple, but it's funny how often we're just using our peripheral vision on the wall. And another fun thing that we can look for on these styles of boulders, just your classic crimp rail line with lots of blockers, is sometimes, not all the time, we can find this really fun grip technique that is extremely helpful as well. And it's I don't know what maybe the typical name for it is. I just call it like, I don't know, the crack thumb grip, probably something better. And that's when we have a crack that's like close enough to the hold that we can actually place our forefingers on the hold and press on the blocker with our thumb. Now this isn't the best example. I'm just using this to kind of demonstrate what's happening because this is kind of too high actually. You see how my fingers are being like awkwardly risen to get my thumb into place? This actually isn't helpful. But I'm gonna climb up to the second last hold, and I think there's actually an instance where this grip could really benefit me. When we climbed this boulder initially, I went to the second last hold with my left hand, but let's say I'm in the situation where I'm at it with my right hand. In order to help push myself to the right and use it as a Gaston, I think that this grip technique could really help me do that. Okay, so let's say that I'm in this position where I'm grabbing this hold and the foot is not really, it's kind of hard to lay back on this hold because it's so underneath me. I can actually use my thumb to press me over to the right a little bit, and this actually gives me a little bit of extra stabilization. I can really feel my thumb is working here. Oh, I almost lost it there. But anyway, this grip technique you don't see all the time, but it's a really fun little hack when you do run into it. The reason it's helpful is because it can give you just more direction and more directional control. Like this is a good example. I wanted to direct myself to the right so I could lay back this hold in order to match it. And if my fingers are like this, I can't really like levitate myself this way, right? But if I have my thumb pushing, I can do that. And that's where the directional force is really helpful. So you can look for this hack on the crimp cracky boulders. Okay, so while I was looking around the gym and scoping out the V7s, and then I saw this one, I had a feeling that this looks like it's gonna be the hardest V7 in the gym. I really feel like the difficulty's turned up a bit on this one. So let's hop on it, climb it, and see what we can make of it. The start position as well is kind of strange. Like this volume foot is very bad. It's like flush with the wall. I don't actually think I'm really gonna be stepping on it. I almost think I just touched the foot, and it might be easier to campus this first move. Because like, I mean, look at this. I'm not really stepping on it. So I'm gonna campus. And these volumes are like really blocked, so they're actually kind of crimps at this point. This climb is definitely really hard. These volumes are slopey and crimpy and bad. Oh, yeah. Probably gonna be the hardest V7 we try today. Really difficult and really fun. So anyway, this is gonna lead me into my opinion on this boulder and V7 climbing in general. And that is the idea that once we identify as like a V7 climber, you know, we're mostly climbing in the V7 grade and we're trying to progress to the V8 grade. In my opinion, this is where we start training Hangboard, the magical training tool that we all know of as climbers. So with just how physically difficult that climb felt, I can use as much technique as I want and all these little tips and tricks. But at the end of the day, there is going to be a prerequisite amount of finger strength I'm gonna need in order to hold onto these like really bad volume crimps, and also a level of pinch strength in order to grab these bad pinches. Like, and this is definitely something that we need to keep in mind while we're trying to progress is like, you know, what are the technical aspects that we can improve our climbing to climb harder boulders and harder grades? But okay, when is it just like a physical requirement that we're at a plateau if we don't have a certain level of strength? And like I said, in my opinion, V7 is a good, healthy point to start training hangboard and pinches. We'll take you over to the hangboard section now, and I'll give you like a very general recommendation for how you should go about training hangboard. And everyone has different opinions on this. You'll hear varying opinions from coaches, climbers, on when you should start training hangboard, what you should do. But I'm gonna give you my opinion. And I've been climbing and training and competing for 16 years, and this is what has worked well for me. And I've seen a lot of my friends also have success with this sort of training method and starting to implement it around V7. Now, my hangboard protocol advice is very, very simple. And this is, I've kind of stuck with the same routine for 16 plus years. So first of all, I pretty much only train half crimp, and I think it's the most important grip type to train. We have the forefinger drag here. Half crimp is when these three fingers are at a 90-degree angle and bent, and your pinky is just dragging. And then full crimp is when we get our thumb over top. So drag, half, full. I like to just train half crimp because you're also training the strength required for full crimp and drag at the same time. And it's just easier and more efficient, in my opinion, to stick to one grip type. So I only train half crimp, and that's what I'd recommend. So I would pick an edge size that is moderately difficult, but quite comfortable. Like I train on this edge, and I could probably hang this edge for like 20 seconds, maybe 30 seconds. So that's like the edge size I would stick to. So anyway, I like to stick to my one grip type and my one edge. And then the way that I scale the difficulty is just by adding weight. So when we're starting off, of course, we shouldn't be adding weight with a weight belt or whatnot. So what we're gonna do, I recommend 5-second hangs. This is a good range to really train like strength and power at the same time. 5-second hangs, half crimp hang, arms like kind of neutral, maybe a little bend, kind of personal preference. And we just do 5-second hangs. When we're climbing V7, I would recommend 5 to 6 sets of one hang, and the hang is 5 seconds long. And if we're doing one rep for 5 seconds and 5 to 6 sets, I'd recommend about 3 minutes rest in between sets. It's pretty solid. And if you find that that's not enough recovery for you, just increase the rest a little bit. No harm in too much rest. And I would recommend doing this about 1 to 2 times a week, probably 2 times a week if you can. And this doesn't seem like a lot of volume. You know, we're only doing 6 hangs per session, but actually it goes a long way. And just being consistent about it, you really start to notice extra strength and stability in your fingers, and especially on the wall. And then one other quick, really solid grip type to train, in my opinion as well, is a pinch block. So this is my personal pinch block. I carry it everywhere I go, but a lot of gyms will have one as well. So I train pinch block the exact same way I train hangs. We have our block, we attach some weight, and we do 5-second lifts. Exact same protocol as the crimp hangs, 5 seconds, 5-6 sets, 1 to 2 times a week. And this is a really solid, consistent routine you can do to increase your grip strength on the wall. All right, next up we have a fun looking little slab climb. So, nice, obvious thing that stands out to me right away, these spike holds. So there's a lot of different brands of hold companies that make these spikes. They're all like pretty similar, right? They have the slopiness on the outside and they kind of come to a point, but the surface is so slopey that you can't really crimp it, right? And it's like just weird to grab overall. And we see these holds as we start working into V6, V7, probably most commonly V7 up. Usually we're not grabbing these holds on like a V6. So anyway, now that we are seeing these holds more in V7, let's talk about how to grab them. So the slopey volcano spike is a great example of when I like to use a grip called the lobster claw grip. I think also some people call it the lighter grip, but let's take a look at this hold here. So the idea is we can't really crimp these holds unless we have like fingers of steel and we can somehow crimp this. So a nice way to get a little bit more meat of our finger involved is we take our pointer finger, we put it along one of the edges of the circle, and then we cap it with our thumb. Now this hold is, I'm definitely gonna grab it like this, but this is like a bad feeling lobster claw. A better example is actually here. So this one, we have even like more of a longer surface on this side, so we can really use the long surface of our pointer finger and cap it with our thumb. And this feels like extra solid. Whereas if I tried to crimp this slopey surface with 2 fingers, I'm not gonna be doing anything. And another great thing about the lobster claw grip is that it also gives you, similar to the grip we were just talking about, like the thumb crack, it gives you really great directional pulling force, which is always helpful when we're trying to climb and we want to put ourselves in the direction that we want to go. Because with this position, I can pull down with my thumb, I can push down, I can pull to the side because I'm compressing the surface, and I can pull any which way I want. And so it's going to help me really find the position that I want to be for this, this boulder. And then the other element of this boulder is that we're doing a dyno as well. From these holds, we're going to dyno to this hold. So yeah, let's hop on and see how it goes. So I'm going to use my lobster grip for pointer finger down, thumb capped, pointer finger down, thumb capped, and I can use my directional force to push down as I'm moving upwards. Now I got to do this tricky dyno. Oh, this dyno is really difficult. Okay, one more move to go. Boulder's not over. Another little dyno. This one seems a bit easier. Super fun boulder. Now, I have not a little bit of advice for this boulder as well. So we had a really tricky dyno, really low percentage. And as we start moving up in the V grades, we get to V7, dynos are going to be more low percentage. And what this means is, yes, the move is physically difficult, but actually more than physical difficulty, there's a lot of elements that are almost left up to chance and are harder for our brain to optimize while we're trying to do the move, meaning that there's just a higher percentage that we're gonna fall, and we kind of got to get lucky to stick it. And so the reason this move is low percentage is because I'm twisted. It's hard for my brain to process like when to push off my left and when to push off my right. I also have to land a hand and a foot at the same time, and it's hard to coordinate more than one limb. And so all these factors together are making the move low percentage and difficult for my brain to process. So a way in which we can increase our chances of sticking the move is actually, let's say that I fall on the move. So let's jug up. So if I fall on the move, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna get right back on. And the reason for this is because the muscle memory is extra fresh in my brain and it can better coordinate its movements because I just did it. You see how much easier I did that move than the first time. And I think it's actually because I did it on a double take. That's what we like to call this. When we fall and immediately get back on, I like to call it a double take. And typically with the coordination, or a low percentage move like this, double taking can be advantageous because our body has the muscle memory super fresh and can just execute it for us. Whereas if we haven't tried the boulder in 10 minutes and we get on it on our first attempt, our body has to relearn the muscle memory and is less likely to stick the move. So now, one thing to be aware of with double taking boulders is how do we thread the line of needing rest because we just fell, and when are we actually able to get back on, and like, do we have the fitness to actually stick the move even though we're kind of tired from falling? Typically, we'll double take moves the less steep the angle is. The steeper the angle gets, maybe the less likely we are to double take a move because it's extra taxing. Whereas this, it's not so taxing on my grip, right? Like, a lot of the weight is on our feet and the weight is just sort of distributed throughout our limbs equally. Whereas on a steep, it's just all in our arms. So I can tell this boulder for me is not tiring me out super much, and I'd rather have the advantage of having the muscle memory with maybe just like 5% extra fatigue, and that's gonna help me stick the move more consistently than if I take the extra rest, get to 100% physical like readiness, but I have less muscle memory. So anyway, you just have to keep in mind and know for yourself when you're too tired and actually need rest, or when you can go again and use your muscle memory to your advantage. All right, so next up, this one, the theme is slopers and volumes. So as we get to V7, the surfaces that we have to step on will get slopier and slopier, and it will become more important to emphasize the idea of using our heels down technique. So similar to the smearing concept we were talking about earlier, I don't want to be stepping in such a way where just the tips of my toes are on this volume. And I want to be forcing my heels down as much as they can go in order to get more surface area with my rubber so that I have more friction and I don't slip. Now, let's say I can't get my heel all the way down. That's okay. Like, even just like the full ball of my foot is going to be fine because this requires a lot of mobility, but I just don't want to be doing this, right? Where just the tip is on and I can slip. So that's the first thing I'm going to be doing while I am climbing this boulder, is making sure I get a lot of contact area. So let's give this one a try. Definitely really hard. That one was super fun. As you can see, I was really making sure to get lots of surface area. I could feel this extra stick and I wasn't gonna slip. And then one other thing I did that was helpful for this middle sequence. So we have a sloper here. The common idea with slopers that we always can refer to is the lower we are on slopers, the better, because we can hang underneath and get maximum friction. Whereas if we pull really high on the sloper, we can't sink into our skin and get the extra friction. So we want to be low on sloper. So what's a good way we can achieve that with our foot setup? So if I'm on this hold and I'm sort of standing with my knees parallel to the wall, you see how that's, with my knees perpendicular to the wall, and I'm just like being kind of straight on in this position here. You can see how my butt is being pushed out because my knee is gonna hit the wall. And so I'm straight on like this, butt is pushed out. I'm not underneath the sloper like this where I would get a lot of friction. I have to really pull back. And because the surface is slopey, I can't actually pull back. It's really hard. So if I'm here, how can I put myself underneath the sloper? Because my knee's gonna hit the wall. Well, how about we turn our knees out and open up our hips? So let's do this. So instead of being like this, I can really open up my hip, and look at this. Look how it naturally just pushes myself underneath the sloper. Whereas if I go straight on, I come out from the wall, I open my hips, I go lower, and I can feel like so much less pressure on my hand right now. So a common theme with slopers is no matter what foot you're stepping on, even if you're just on a foot chip like this, if you open that hip, it's gonna put you lower because it also just brings your pelvis lower to the ground and will put you in a better position with slopers. So if you find yourself cruxing out on a sloper sequence, ask yourself, can I open up my hip a little bit to put myself lower? And if the answer is yes, do that. And chances are you'll feel stronger on the sloper you're grabbing. Okay, next boulder, got some really big volumes we gotta maneuver through. So already I can see something, a little piece of beta that I'm going to be doing on this boulder. Let's climb on and talk about it. So it's this move I'm going to do here with my feet. I'm going to be doing what's called a reverse bicycle. So I'm pressing down with my left foot and pulling up with my right foot, and this is creating a really stable position. You see, as we're climbing V7, we got to maneuver with some pretty bad slopey holds, and the reverse bicycle is something we should be looking for a lot to help get more tension on these slopey surfaces. Because if I were to take it off, all of a sudden, I can't keep the tension on a slopey surface with bad holds, right? I need the extra support from the toe hook to get tension on the foot and keep my lower body in underneath the slopers. And the reverse bicycle is something we see a lot. You can even get like little small ones in lots of different places to take weight off and help you get more tension. And of course, this is playing off like what a normal bicycle is, where we have one foot on top of the hold and then the other below it. And we're doing the opposite. We're compressing the hold like this and this, rather than with the reverse bicycle where we're opposing this and this, but it's achieving the same effect and locking our feet in, creating a very stable position. Anyway, let's chalk back up and finish this boulder off. Just makes these holds feel like buckets when I have the reverse bicycle in. A little knee bar, get a little rest. Ascending looks pretty tricky. Whoa, man. Okay. This is also in contention for one of the harder V7s in the gym. The ending was really tricky. I had to find a good way to sit on that volume. That climb looked pretty hard, didn't it? Just because it's a V8. Have to stay tuned for another video to see how we go about climbing V8s.